Hello et bienvenue. I'm your host, Sesson Gao, with our guest for today, known for his staggering 5-page research paper and crippling depression, Christopher Villegas, here to lend some insight on how some voices remain unheard historically and in the modern day. So, Christopher, what are some classic examples of the tyranny of the few, and what lessons can we learn from them?
Well, hello. Thank you for having me on your show today. It's a great honor to be here. And as for the tyranny of the few, I feel like there's a lot of historical examples that are prevalent. Places like Rhodesia, South Africa, and the Spanish Netherlands are all good examples of what you say is the tyranny of the few. In South Africa, they had apartheid, which involved a policy or system of segregation or discrimination on the grounds of race. And, obviously in South Africa, the few were pushed down there, and there was a lot of discrimination. And we've learned that, the systems such as apartheid have no place in modern society.
Are there ever positive outcomes to absolute rulers or the tyranny of the few?
I feel like Singapore's prime minister, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, but Lee Hsien Loong is a good example of an absolute leader. He's the third prime minister of Singapore, and he introduced a 5-day working week for civil servants with the hope of increasing the birth rate. And one of his major accomplishments was to propose the building of 2 integrated resorts in Singapore, and that created a huge avenue for Singapore's economy.
And what do you think allows people to remain voiceless in their own governments in the internet age? How do people continue to be pushed down by a government when it's so easy to be heard on the internet?
Well, I feel like in the internet age that we're currently in, it doesn't force them to go outside and physically participate in our government and voice their opinions through protests and the like. Instead, they can voice their opinions through social media, and they engage in civil discourse through these social media outlets, and their arguments become small, fragmented, and petty, and they don't really hold any meaning. And because of all the internet and all as we've evolved through time, people are needlessly busy, and they have so many different things to engage with, so they become quite disengaged from government. And I feel like that is why many of their voices aren't being heard or recognized.
So, given this, how do you think that we can actually lend a voice to people like these who are so silent in this digital age?
Well, the only thing that we can really do is we need to encourage them to get away from these types of petty arguments and non-meaningful conversations, and we really need to get them to engage in meaningful civil discourse. And by what I mean by that is they really need to, get out, maybe for things that they really feel are important to them, like political issues they really feel are important. They need to go out and meet opposing viewpoints and discuss this with other people and important maybe policymakers too, politicians, and that's only the really way they're going to get their voices heard in the current age that we're in.
So how can we prevent the will of the elite from eclipsing our own voices? How can we prevent us from becoming us, as in relatively middle to high class, high class people in the society, from being pushed down to a situation similar to these people who have no voices?
Well, they really need to demand popular representation and really, as I said before, increase their engagement with our government. If our population engaged with our government more frequently and maybe had more meaning to anything that they were trying to get through, their opinions and political viewpoints, then many of the problems that we discussed before that could be dealt with relative ease. It's just we've become so disengaged with our government that the elite can basically control everything from behind the scenes. We really need to force our voices to be heard, and really just, as I said, more engagement with the government.
I agree with you on that one. A great example of a country that engages with their government frequently is Iceland. They have a lot of political outreach in their people. So that concludes this edition to the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed making it, and I would like to thank Christopher Villegas for joining us. Tune in next week for a new perspective on how voices remain unheard.